I want to go back to Isla just briefly before we bring up more people with the hands and say, Isla, your word for this evening that begins with S is sadism, is it not?
Sadism. I know it's good, but I'm going to kind of double up. Sadism and safeguarding. Okay, so I want to kind of open and deepen the conversation about that. But yes, I would like to see where we go, because I think that so far what we're seeing is a lot of we're seeing a lot of capturing a lot of conversations about paraphilia as really being very benign, and I think that all of us know that that's really not the truth. So I want to kind of engage people on that.
Our first contribution to the space, rather than a hand up, is a question that's been sent in to us. It says the following: I heard in the previous space that you, I'm presuming that's myself and Isla, disagree with the concept and definition of a homosexual transsexual and believing that this is distinct from AGP. Why do you feel this way? Okay, it's a good one to get the ball rolling. Isla, do you want to tackle that one?
Homosexual, transsexual. I find this an incredibly frustrating position that people seem to hold. I mean, I could try to. I mean, basically, I don't believe in any of it. Okay, what I'm finding across the board now is that people are trying to get out of jail free cards, and this is the most popular one. They want to, characterize these two groups as one being a bit more benign and one a bit more malignant. So yeah, I'm not having any of it, and I think that that's something that let's unravel that tonight, definitely.
Homosexual, transsexual, adopting extreme female mannerisms, adopting the caricature, claiming that their sexual partner, in this case men, are something that validates their sexuality, which again, that means they've simply become a prop in the fetish. The idea that an individual has to be aroused by their being the opposite sex, the idea that you stray into that territory of it is actually arousal by yourself as a sexual orientation, it supposes that the entire premise of sexual attraction is something that one is limited to oneself. But that's not true for AGP. And the reason that that is not true for AGP is that when we examine AGP in particular, it requires other individuals' feedback. I also think it's a way of minimizing individual, or potentially an attempt to minimize the danger posed by individuals who are just generally homosexual. And it's an attempt to suggest that because they are not attracted to women, or claim not to be attracted to women, they are not a risk to go into women's spaces. And autogynephiles are the bad ones, but actually the homosexual, transsexual ones are just confused and they're the good ones.
I am absolutely firm in their knowledge that we do not at all ever diagnose children as having personality disorders or autogynephilia. Let me just follow something on from what Louisa was saying, because this is something which has been kind of coming up a lot and is really, really relevant. And one of the reasons why I've put some of the things in the nest that I have in terms of the issue around safeguarding, because one of the things which keeps coming up is around this issue of children having emerging AGP.
I didn't. My intention was not to suggest that children have aberrant sexualities, but there must be a point at which our young people develop an interest that isn't healthy, and we know that they are absolutely saturated by porn. But yeah, I just wanted to be clear that I'm not saying that our children are bad and that our children have sexualities. I'm talking about adolescence where everything is conducted in private, but it's a funny sort of privacy that is totally influenced by online content over which we as adults have little control, and actually the young people who are subjected to that content also have no control.
Psychologists make a point of never diagnosing or labelling a child with any personality or psychological disorder, and Lescap also indicated that includes and extends to paraphilic disorders. However, and I think it's very worthwhile noting, that does not mean you cannot suggest that there are severe red flags when a child or an individual who is younger, 16 to 18, well, that would also be a child in our law, but not necessarily in the law of everyone who is listening. The problem here is that when that sort of individual starts promoting that, therefore you have a serious problem. And when they start raising that, particularly in those age brackets, you have a serious red flag.
Thank you. I just have a couple of thoughts. Sorry. This conversation was happening in another space the other day, and some good contributions were made, and then I thought of a couple of things myself. So I wanted to just bring them up here. So there's a bit of crossover. So I am personally concerned, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, about safeguarding. So we talk a lot about safeguarding for great reasons, but I'm concerned about how much we turn that in on ourselves as well to safeguard ourselves and our mental well-being and everything. And this isn't one of those self-care talks. It's actually very specifically about the difference between being informed and being overexposed to vulgar content or sexual content, whatever it might be. Along those same lines, I have some thoughts. I wouldn't say concerns, but some thoughts about whether or not we are contributing to the normalization of certain terms and ideas by having, a lot of conversations and going back to that balance between being informed versus being overexposed. And then on that same kind of note, using terms like autogynephile and AGP, I do have a worry that those terms are not conveying the depravity and the urgency to the average person.
I was just thinking, they're really good points, Jess. And I think that, you're right about the issue of, it sort of hiding the depravity and the urgency of the 101 of safeguarding, okay? It's acting on the very worst possibilities and closing off the gaps. It's about trying to look for what could possibly happen and closing off those doors.
Is that all right?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can. Perfect. Go ahead, Fraser.
Sorry. Yeah, look, some of you will know me, and some of you hate me probably. I'm an academic, or I was an academic. I've kind of been cancelled a bit, and a teacher. So I'm used to chucking in controversial thoughts, and so I've been thinking about this, and the controversial thought is we really shouldn't be talking about this. And the reason I think we need to think about this is because it reminds me very much of the 1970s and the early 1980s and the LGB fight back then, where we were seriously derailed by twats like Tatchell and Pi and Nambla. And we ended up having all this controversy around the issue that wasn't actually about the issue at all. We're going to talk about the erosion of same-sex attraction rights. And actually, when you think about it, heterosexual rights are being challenged too, because they're based on a sex attraction of being an opposite sex attraction. Sometimes the simplest answer is the correct answer. And I think that we need to consider whether we really do give these people any more oxygen than they actually deserve.
It does seem to be that there is this increase now of children attacking other children. So I'm just wondering how if anyone knows anything, this kind of illusion of AGP, or even at that young age, kind of using this as an excuse, even now, or just those kind of events more frequently. Thanks.
I think they're all being profoundly affected by, societal changes and the impact, obviously, of social media and pornography.
Oh, good morning, everyone, from Melbourne. I'm so sorry, but I can't hear Isla at all all of a sudden. I have no idea why. I was going to drop out and drop in, but I came up. I'm going to go back a bit to where I put my hand up first and talk about the overexposure to AGPs. Any decent therapist, the first thing they tell you to do if you are exposed to a narcissist is to go no contact, or Grey Rock if you have to. But no contact, have nothing to do with them. Don't call them, don't look at them, don't, just completely block them out, because that's the way that you preserve your own mental health. Now, in this fight, this is the opposite of what we're doing. Like, we are overexposing ourselves to people who are like sick, and they're sick not just in their interests but in a spiritual way. They will drain the life out of you. And I've been in this fight for a few years now because my former father-in-law is an AGP, and something that I've noticed with people who have been in this fight, really strong people, that they're getting weary. And I think that's where some of the infighting has come from, because even though you don't ever want to be sucked in by a narcissist, the process sucks you in, even though you don't really want to be part of it. But I know, as someone who, is a people pleaser, that if I watch too much Jeffrey Marsh videos, that I get sucked in. I feel it with all my knowledge and my awareness of what's actually going on. I can feel myself getting drawn in. And for someone new to the fight, or for someone who's exhausted by it, I can only imagine what this constant exposure to gaslighting, to deception, not even to mention the institutional support for these psychopaths. I can only imagine what that's doing to people that don't have the self-awareness or the experience to know what's actually going on.
And as for treating autogynephilia and knowing that, yes, one of these minors could end up growing up to have autogynephilia once they enter Tanner stage 4, what we need to focus on is educating parents about keeping their kids away from pornography and looking out for these warning signs. You should have Sentinel on sometime so that he can share resources about how he kept his kid away from porn until he was 18, because he's a really tech savvy guy, and he talked about how he could monitor his son's devices and make sure that none of that stuff was there to particularly screw him up. But with children, it's just making sure that you have the right parental controls on there, and essentially having that type of talk with boys about what autogynephilia is, because as you're aware, most men and most boys like their penises, and you have to be able to talk to them about what estrogen does to it. It won't work anymore. It's going to shrink. It's not going to work for you, and you're only going to be stuck doing anal stuff